Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we will be ranking the characters of HOTD into this tier list, and I will also try to answer some of your questions that I often get under my videos. So let's get started with this list. We're testing a new setup as well, so let me know how you like it for smaller videos like this one, and let me know if you agree with the tier list in the comments below as usual. Okay, let's get this started with Laris. Laris for me is a S tier character. I think Laris is interesting. He's definitely evil. I think he's manipulating and scheming. So I'm really excited to see how he'll impact the story in the next season. And I had the opportunity to dig a little deeper into his character in part 2 of the Alicent analysis. And I am fascinated and curious about what his actual motivations are. So definitely an S tier for me. Then next we have Viserys. I've gotten a few comments on that video about some disagreements that we had on this topic, which is perfectly fine. And I decided to put him in the A tier because, well, first of all, he's a very interesting character. I think he was one of the most important characters in the first season. There's a reason why I devoted a full video to him and to what I think is his flawed leadership. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and take a look at that. The thing with him, though, is I find some of his decisions to be weak and irresponsible. He had multiple opportunities to avoid the conflict between the Blacks and the Greens, and he failed every time. So he somewhat was willfully blind to some of the drama that was happening because of his human nature, because of his love for his daughter, but it also just led to more drama because he wasn't able to actually do something about it. So that's why I put him in the A tier. Oh, by the way, I have received a few questions about how to pronounce my channel name, which I appreciate. My channel name is my actual name and it's pronounced Guy Huppé. So thank you so much for asking. Let's go with Sir Criston Cole. I placed him in the B tier. And the reason for that is because we don't know a whole lot about him other than his backstory with Rhaenyra and the fact that Alicent took him under her wing. So I just hope we will get a bit more character development in the next season. Like, I want to know why he is the way that he is, what is his end goal. With all that being said, let's face it, we're always very happy to see him on screen. Okay, next we're gonna go with Lyman Beesbury. And I've put him in the C tier list, which is a little higher than maybe other characters on the Small Council. We'll see that later. But the reason why I've placed him here is, okay, we don't know a whole lot about him in the show anyways. He's not a central character, but his death was memorable, and it also helped us better understand the mess that the Greens are actually willing to tolerate to take the throne. And so that's why I placed him in the C tier. Here. And while we are at it, I want to thank you very, very much for all the support on the channel. We are growing super fast, and many of you have been providing positive feedback or constructive feedback, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate that. When I say that I like to interact with you, that I read the comments, I actually do, and I take that into account to try to make better content. Once again, thank you very much, and I hope we will continue to interact together on YouTube and continue sharing content that we like with each other. The next character that we have in our tier list here is Baela Velaryon, and I placed her in the B tier. So I expect that we'll get to know the children better in the next season. We didn't have a lot of exposure scenes to understand what the children are actually thinking of the drama between the two factions, right? And so Baela is a B tier at the moment. I'm curious to see how Baela and Rhaenyra's upbringing will affect their worldview since they were separated at some time of the season. And I think there's opportunities for these two characters to eventually go up in the tier list in the next season. But for now, with the little information that we have about them, I will place Baela in the B list. Helaena Targaryen. Okay, I know you guys love Helaena. I debated as to whether or not I wanted to place her in the A list, in the A tier but I decided to place her in the B tier. And the reason for that is, first of all, she has a strong potential of upgrading into the A tier in the next season. So let's keep our hopes high. I would love to see her in that tier eventually. But the thing is, I'm intrigued by her closeness with Aemond as opposed to Aegon. She keeps us on our toes when she talks in her cryptic sentences, but we don't know a lot about her yet, enough to justify a A tier. So we'll keep her in the B tier for now. By the way, I have received many comments correctingly pointing how I sometimes mispronounce words, and I am doing my very best to pronounce everything properly. The reason for that is I am Canadian and English is my second language. I was born and raised in the province of Quebec, so my first language is French, which I'm very thankful for. It's a beautiful language, but it also means that I have an accent in English. Canadians watching right now are likely familiar with my accent. It's very common here. We are a bilingual country, but some of you on YouTube might not be so familiar with it. So that's why I sometimes mispronounce things to answer your question. Next, we have Jacaerys Velaryon. I also placed him in the B tier. Obviously, he has a strong potential of being upgraded in the next season. I'm curious to see how he will handle the Dance of the Dragons and how he will react to the news of Lucerys' death, as well as his trip up north. I'm very curious to see what he's going to do on behalf of the Blacks there. And he appears to be a disciplined person, and he could eventually be a good king if the Blacks succeed in reclaiming the throne. So I am very excited to see how this character will develop in the next season. But for now, I think it's fair to keep him in the B tier list. Next, we have Maester Orwell. I've placed him in the D tier list because, listen, we don't know a lot about him, so we'll see if that changes in season 2. I expect that some characters are just being introduced now and will take on a greater role in the next season. So for now, he's kind of just like a side character that we don't know too much about. So at the moment, I kept him in the D tier. Then we have Aemond Targaryen. Apparently, I'm not pronouncing that right, so I'll have to work on that for the next video. For the same reason, I would put Aemond in the B tier list with a very strong potential of being upgraded in the A list in the next season. The show makes clear his core personality traits. Like, we know he's violent. We kind of think he's hungry for power. We may suspect he's scheming to take the throne for himself, but beyond that, I would like to know why he's like that in the first place, or who his potential allies are. He's just so unpredictable, and we still know so little about him that I placed him in the B tier for that reason. Next, we have Laenor Velaryon, and I placed this character in the A tier list. Yes, in the A tier list. First of all, I love the Velaryons, and I'm in blue today. This is a coincidence. But the reason I like the Velaryons is I like their approach to the Game of Thrones. I like that they are both bold and also careful. They know their power. They make sure everyone knows their power. And I put Laenor in the A list, A tier, because his character had a very interesting arc in the first season with emotional layers. His sexuality was endorsed by his wife Rhaenyra, but it also placed him at odds with his duty to the realm and his personal need for freedom. So I thought that arc was very interesting, and that's why I placed him in the A tier list. I don't know if we're going to see him in season 2 or if he's gone for good. I guess we'll have to wait a little longer to see. Rhaena Velaryon, we also talked about her sister earlier, and I also put her in the B tier for the same reason as Baela. Harwin Strong is a C tier for me, only because we did not get the chance to really know him a lot before he died. So I just cannot put him in the B tier. even if his character has had a huge impact on the plot line of the season, especially with regards to Rhaenyra's children and their legitimacy and therefore her legitimacy, but himself, the character, we just don't know enough about him. So I think C tier is fair. The next character we have on the list is Rhaenys. This is definitely an A tier for me. The thing is, I don't trust her 100%. I don't think she's fully thrilled that she was skipped as a woman and could not get the throne, but Rhaenyra is expected to reign. So I don't think she is 100% on board with that. You know, in the last episode, you can notice how everyone kneels for Rhaenyra but her. She does not kneel for Rhaenyra. And so that's something that I'm like, oh, I'm interested in knowing what's going on there. You know, the House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, they never do things for nothing, so there's a reason for that, and I'm sure we'll eventually know why. Also, many of the online community has pointed out how when she erupts with her dragon at the crowning of Aegon, she probably killed a few civilians there, and it's just, to me, interesting how there's no consideration for these people there. So I'm just intrigued with her motivations, and I'm a little torn with my own feelings towards her. So with that being said, I am 100% certain she is savvy. I think she's calculating, and I think she's very much able as a character. So she deserves an A tier place for me because of that. Next, we have Alicent Hightower, a favorite on this channel. Oh yes. I placed her obviously in the S tier. I absolutely love this character. I love the development of Alicent in the first season as a person, as a character. I feel for her the way that she was maneuvered into an undesirable position as a young girl for the sake of her father's ambitions. And I also love to see how she perceives the threat to her life and her children's life as an adult, and how that pushes her motivations and her decisions in the second half of the season. So I both feel bad for her, and also I know that she's gonna give us a run for our money. So I predict that she will be willing to do some crazy stuff to maintain her power and to save her family, as I think that's what she thinks she's doing anyways. And so she's very, very interesting to me, and that's why I started this video series covering her. And I want to take this moment to thank everyone who has been watching the Alicent Part 1 and Part 2 videos. They are by far the most successful videos on the channel as far as new subscribers. So if you watch that video, those videos, and you subscribe, thank you very much. It is very encouraging to read your comments and to read all the likes that we are getting on those videos, and I'm very, very thankful that my content has found an audience and that we found each other. So I hope we'll continue to grow our new community in the new year. Next, we have Odo Hightower. Speaking of the Greens, this is definitely 100% an S tier for me. Listen, Odo is at the heart of the conflict, right? He is scheming, he is intelligent, he's diplomatic, he's also composed. He is fundamentally pragmatic in his quest to usurp the throne. And many of you have been pointing out, I don't remember what video it was, but there's a video I say that Odo might actually want to avoid war. And people said, no, Odo wants war. I don't believe Odo wants war. I think Odo wants a bloodless coup. He doesn't want war because it's not to his benefit to have war, and I suspect that he knows that. So I'm curious to see how he will navigate war in the next season, how he will negotiate his relationship with Alicent in the next season, because now that Aegon is king, he can bypass Alicent and go straight to his grandson for power. We've seen some form of that in the last episode, so I'm curious to see how that's going to play out, and I suspect that Odo and Alicent will start having some arguments or some divide within the Greens for power, because I suspect Aegon will be very difficult to control or to influence. So definitely an S tier for me. Speaking of Aegon, he's the next character we can start to work on here. To tell you the truth, I've placed Aegon in the A tier somewhat reluctantly, but here's my thinking. Aegon is now king, And the show is doing a really good job at showing us how he never wanted to be king in the first place. And I feel like he will eventually be drunk on power, and perhaps he'll be drunk on power very quickly, somewhat like Joffrey in Game of Thrones. We also know that Aegon is completely crazy, he has no sympathy, he has no empathy for the people, and he will be obviously a terrible king. So the other thing is, if the Greens think they can control Aegon, forget it, they will not be able to control him. So I'm interested in finding out how his rise to power will affect the storyline, the realm, and ultimately the Dance of the Dragons and the Greens themselves. Episode 9 made him a A-tier character, otherwise I think he would have been a B-tier character. So let's see how the next season plays with this character. Sir Harold Westerling is our next character. I've placed him in the D tier because, well, I just did not pay so much attention to him in season 1. So, you know, we have hints as to his higher moral standards compared to other characters anyways, but we don't know much else. So I kept him at a D tier for now. Okay, the next one is Laena Velaryon. And I am disappointed to say that I had to place her in the C tier. And the reason for that is because we don't get a chance to really get to know her as an adult. So, you know, the show kills her off so fast, even though the death scene is so iconic. We just don't know enough about her. Like, I would have loved to know what her relationship with Daemon was, you know, beyond what we saw in the show, what her motivations were in the Game of Thrones. So because we don't know her so much, I placed her in the C tier, and I'm a little disappointed with that. The next one we have is Lucerys Velaryon, and I've placed him in the B tier because his character has had a huge impact on the storyline. So when he slashed Aemon's eye, I think that was very highly consequential for the royal family. We covered this heavily in the second part of the Alicent analysis. And I like that Lucerys is somewhat sweeter or maybe less confident in his abilities. It's a change from other characters in the series, so I like that about him. And he just felt just so out of place, right? Like he was just so different, and his death was just so iconic. R.I.P. baby. B tier, well deserved. By the way, have you guys seen the new Pinocchio movie? And I'm not talking about the live action remake, I'm talking about the stop motion Pinocchio movie by Guillermo del Toro on Netflix. I am actually blown away by this movie. The stop motion, the music, their themes of grief and friendship and war. I really highly recommend it, and I talk about it because I am considering making a video about it. So if you go and watch the movie, that would be, maybe that's a good thing to do, because I plan to cover it eventually. It's quite a weird movie, but it's absolutely worth it. It's not like the Disney classic that we have grown to love. I think this is next level. So let me know what you think. The next character that we have is Lionel Strong. I've placed him in a C tier only because he was the Hand of the King. There's nothing really special about him in the show above that. So if he was not the Hand of the King, he would probably have been a D tier, but because of that, I'll place him in the C tier just for good karma. Okay, the next character we have is Mysaria. Okay, I have placed her in the A tier, and I understand that you might disagree with me, especially when other characters like Aemond are in the B tier. But I have very, very high hopes for this character. I'm intrigued with her role in the whole drama, her spy network, her motivations, and so on. So I know we don't know much about her, but we know just enough to be really excited for season 2. And I suspect she's already playing a role behind the scenes, but we have yet to understand the scope of her influence. So I'm taking a gamble with this one with A tier, and hopefully this character will live up to expectations. Daemon Targaryen is our next character. He's obviously an A tier character as well. Listen, I think Daemon has been overlooked by the community. He is absolutely crazy. He is dangerous, he's violent, and you know what? I don't think he will be loyal to Rhaenyra in the end. I think he is scheming like everyone else. I believe he wants the throne for himself, and because of that, it just makes him a compelling character. It just makes him very interesting. And Daemon could very well be upgraded to a S tier in the next season. So I'm excited to see where he goes from here. Corlys Velaryon is our next character, and he definitely deserves an A tier for me. His ambitions and his motivations for accumulating power are super interesting to me. I was surprised to see his dereliction of duty at a time of crisis when he went missing for something like years or whatever. Like, it makes this character interesting to watch for season 2. And I think the Velaryons are pretty well positioned in the Game of Thrones at this point. I would love to make a video about that house one day, and maybe I'm foreshadowing this with the colors today. Next we have Rhaenyra. And many of you have been accusing me of not liking Rhaenyra, which is not true. I really like Rhaenyra, I just have not covered her yet, and we will. Obviously, she is also a S tier character. I think her arc from her teenage years to her adulthood is super interesting. Her relation with gender roles and duty is unique in the show, and I think season 1 ends painting her as a hero in the face of the Greens, but I suspect that she will play dirty just like everyone else. So I think she's going to give us a good show as well. And just like Alicent, by the way, I think she's surrounded by characters with questionable motives. We talked about that in the part 2 of Alicent analysis. Daemon is a prime example on her side. I don't think Daemon has any true love for her. I think he's there for his own power, and I think we've seen glimpses of that in the last episode. So yeah, I'm excited to see her in season 2. And speaking of Rhaenyra, many of you participated in my poll on my community tab, so I will start working on the Rhaenyra character analysis over the holidays. And as you know, these videos take a long time, and when I mean a long time, like part 2 of Alicent took over 40 hours, so maybe one day I'll talk about my the process for it, but it takes a very long time, so I appreciate your patience between uploads. And that's also why I love to schedule premieres, because you guys have been waiting, you're getting excited, and I've been working also a lot on those videos, so I'm getting excited to show them. So when we schedule a premiere, then we can all meet on that day and have a fun conversation in the chat. When we premiered part 2 of Alicent, we had quite a few people in the chat with us on that day, so that was very exciting. So I'll work on Rhaenyra, and then I'll schedule the premiere, and hopefully you guys can come and chat with us as well. And Daemon also had a few good votes as well, so I will eventually cover him. Don't you guys worry. I'm super interested in that character as well. And we have plenty of time before season 2 airs, so I think we're pretty good on timeline here. The next, I'll bundle these two together, Tywin and Jason Lannister. I have placed them in the D tier list. The reason for that is the Lannister brothers are intriguing to me, but they have not been super central to the conflict so far, so I suspect we might see them getting more involved in season 2, so they may be upgraded to a better tier in the next season, but for now I think D is quite fair. Next we have Vaemon Velaryon. I debated as to whether this was a B or a C tier character, and I ended up going with the C tier because his contribution to the storyline was not very long. It wasn't, over a few episodes. It was very limited to this one episode, and it led to a lot of drama. So it mainly focused on his ambition to take control of Driftmark, but other than that, we didn't get to know him so much, so I didn't feel like the B tier was appropriate for him. C tier it is. Next we have Sir Arik and Eric. I will also bundle them together in the D tier list for now, just because we don't yet know how their riff will play out, so I hope we might be able to upgrade them in the next season, as to maybe they'll be able to go in the C tier, I don't know, but for now I'm intrigued, but I just don't know enough. So if you made it this far in this video, comment this emoji in the comments below so I know you've made it. And let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with my list? Do you not agree? What would you change? I'm very curious as usual. And if you have any questions for me, like just random questions and stuff, just let me know down below. This is the perfect video to leave those kinds of questions. And when I make another video, maybe another tier list about episodes, or I don't know, I might be able to answer those questions. And make sure to check the rest of the series. and I'm very excited to see you very soon. And watch that Pinocchio movie. I think it's going to be worth it. Bye.